I will find you. You will ask, what will you do when they find me? Don't be scared of yourself.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
And I'm Ashley.
We would like to welcome you to the Work It, You Are Worth It podcast.
We're two friends sit around and talk about healing, growth, and healthy relationships.
Hey, Dawn.
Hey, Ashley, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. Great. I am feeling so rejuvenated today. It's been a great week.
You know, I definitely feel I like that word, rejuvenated. I'm rejuvenated for our process. I feel rejuvenated to get back into this and really get into the nitty-gritty of this stuff today.
Yeah. You and I have been the last couple of months, really few months, kind of stepping back and navigating our own personal lives, really, and not been recording as often. I'm a little bit delayed getting things edited, right? Because I'm also trying to live a life and navigate, and life gets busier, especially the longer you get in recovery, the healthier you get, life gets busier. It should.
For sure.
So we've just really stepped back, and I think we both have come to, I know we have because we've talked about it, but right, just resetting what the momentum of this podcast, the momentum of what we're doing, why we're doing this, and just not changing it up because it's amazing, but just changing up how we approach it.
I like the word rejuvenating. I do. Rejuvenating this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know for me, the last several months have been difficult in that it has been a lot of processing, a lot of mental and emotional and spiritual growth and conversation. And a lot of times when we're going through that, for me, when I'm going through that, I kind of pull into myself a little bit more, right? I kind of take some time to process and not share as much as vulnerably because I'm a little raw. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's kind of been the last several months for me, right? We have struggled with the speed at which we're recording and editing and doing meetings and the amount of things that are on my plate. And then you add that emotional, mental, spiritual stuff in there, and it really just kind of gets overwhelming. And this was one of the things, our podcast was one of the things that kind of, right, it didn't get pushed off the plate, but some pieces of it got removed.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really excited and very hopeful, thank you, Rhonda, to get back on track and to get the momentum of this back up and going and rejuvenate the whole process again.
I know, yes, and you're right. We the positive feedback that we received, right? That I'm not.
It renewed.
That's it. It really. It's like, okay, this is why we do this. This is why we wanted to do this.
It really just helped me be more concrete in this is what I need to do.
Yes, exactly. And it's funny because we did not talk until today about this, but we both got the same reaction from it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think especially because over the last several weeks, we have discussed maybe cutting back the amount of time we recorded, maybe doing less often. And then so to hear that and to just hear that it makes a difference and it helps and there's people that are actually taking this in, and to hear that our vulnerability isn't just thrown out to a bunch of random different strangers. There's people taking it in and growing from it. It makes it worth it. It makes it, like it renews the want to do it.
So this kind of what kind of happened, and what really for me is something I wanted to talk about this week was I went out of town last week. I went to New Orleans for 3 days with a girlfriend. It's the first time I've ever traveled with a girlfriend. Had an amazing time. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And she was the perfect travel partner for me.
I love that.
She, right, and I know you've traveled with your friend as well, but what I loved about this was there was no expectations from my perspective or her perspective. Um, Thursday, I was by myself all day, walking around doing my thing, which I've traveled a lot recently by myself, and I do love to travel by myself. And so
Yeah.
I got that. And then we met up on Thursday night for a drink, and then Friday we did the typical sightseeing type things, and um, we got to a point where we're gonna do this voodoo ghosty fun tour
Oh, that's
thing.
awesome.
It was the guy sucked. Um,
That
so
sucks.
oh god, it sucked. So I actually bailed in the middle of it, and she's like, "I felt so bad. You paid for it," and I'm like, "No, it was my choice to bail." I could not listen to his voice and his things, and it wasn't scary. It wasn't.
It wasn't your preference.
No, it was not at all. So I bailed. I actually went back to the hotel, relaxed.
So
took a
wait a
shower.
minute. Wait just a second
Yes.
though. You didn't like stay and listen to this thing that was like claws on a chalkboard to you because you paid for it and because your friend was there and you didn't want to hurt her feelings and abandon her and
No,
oh.
I just said, "Hey, I'm gonna bail. This guy's driving me crazy. My legs are tired, and I want to go relax. So I'll see you at dinner."
And she didn't get angry at you like you're leaving me alone and how dare you and
She's like, "Are you okay? Okay. I mean, okay. Are you okay though? You good? You can get back." I'm like, "I'm good. You do you, and right, have a good time and enjoy it." And she did. She actually liked it. She did say the guy was a little annoying, but
right, but that's I could see, right? There's definitely been times where I'm doing something that I thought would be fun and I'm with someone else and they are having a blast, but I am not at all. And it hasn't been in the last several years, the situation I'm thinking of, but I continued through. I finished
right.
the process. I finished the situation because I signed up for it. I wanted to do it and I asked this person to do it with me. So I followed through, which is very, as we know now, codependent.
Yeah, so it was, it actually wasn't even, there was no like thoughts when it happened.
That's
There was
awesome.
no, even after the fact, like there was no should I have stayed. You know how those guilty filled feelings come in after, right? You start the codependent
That's
thoughts
huge.
afterwards. I just left. And I was glad I did, especially later in the evening when, I had taken a shower and I had relaxed a little bit. Oh, let's go get drinks. Let's go walk the French Quarter. Let's go, go to the local spots for drink. I could, I could. So I was glad I did it. I made the right choice. Like I did some self-reflection in that moment. How do I feel? And I made the decision based on that. And I was glad I did. Like there was no regrets.
That is growth. And that in and of itself is something that you should be proud of from that vacation.
I'm very proud. And I actually had a lot of self-reflection moments in this vacation. So Saturday we did a little bit of touring or a little bit of touristy stuff and left Saturday evening. Um, but again, it was a very balanced trip where I had my own space. We didn't even stay in the same hotel. She stayed closer to the water. I stayed in the French Quarter. It was just a very nice trip. So Thursday was by myself and it started pouring, whatever. I went back to the hotel, got cleaned up, and then I went out and I was like, all right, I'm headed to Bourbon Street and I am going to jump bar hop. I'm going to jump from bar to bar to bar
That's awesome. And just have a good time.
and have a good time all by myself so it wasn't like I didn't have to worry, oh, is it too busy? Is it this or this, right? Because it was just me. Went to the first place, sat there, had a drink, had a good time, just was strolling, watching the dancers in the street, listening to the music, danced in the street with people. Like
That's so awesome.
it was great. So then I went to this other location and it was a bar, sat down, had a drink, and there was a band playing, and the musician was very much my type.
Okay.
He was my type. And I was like, okay. So I sat down and I was still planning. I had made reservations to go get oysters at this really big oyster place in town.
Okay.
And so I was just, again, planning on having a drink and working my way to that restaurant. And I'm like, so I sat there and he was singing to me, was flirting because there wasn't many people in there. And between his set, he came up and he started talking to me. And so we had a great conversation between his set, and then he went back up and sang again. And then between the next set, he came back down and was talking to me again. And so this happened. And then between the third set, he comes back down, and I mean, we really hit it off. It's my age, just great conversation. And I was like, yeah. He's like, you're hanging out until like, and I'm like, yeah. I said I had reservations. I said, but you were cute enough to pass on oysters. And he's like, well, thank you. And he's like, so you haven't eaten? And I'm like, no. He's like, let's go get pizza.
Okay.
So between the set, he took me for pizza and bought me pizza, and we just sat there and we talked and then went back, and it was great. And it was kind of like this little first date, unintentional first date in a thing.
Very natural.
Very natural.
And not looking for it, and all of a sudden there it is, and very like, here, take this or don't.
And I will be honest, the entire time in my brain, healthy Dawn, healthy Dawn, healthy Dawn, healthy Dawn, right? I stayed in my moment, not in my head, like with stories.
Right, but awareness. Stay in the moment, practice your tools,
Exactly.
Be present.
I was constantly talking to myself. And being able to be me, authentically me, within healthy boundaries, right? I like to flirt. I like to tease and flirt and right? That's fun.
Right, it's fun, right.
But I stayed within my boundaries of comfortability. So, haven't done this in years, but I went to the bartender. I'm like, hey, do you have a pen? I grabbed a napkin and I wrote my name, wrote my phone number, put it in the tip jar.
Oh.
That was it. I had told him my girlfriend was coming and I was going to be hanging, leaving to go get drinks with her. And he's like, okay, you're not going to hang out until I'm done. I'm like, no, when she gets here, we had plans to go hang out, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm here with her, going to go see her. And I did, right? She got there, big hug, excited. She even said, do you want to hang around here? Do you want to stay? She's like, you can stay. And I'm like, no.
Okay,
no.
Good for you.
I was like, no, I want to see you. I traveled to New Orleans to hang with you.
Right.
And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. And so they were walking, and of course, then we had to have, girlfriend conversations where she's
Girl
like,
talk.
you have two beds. You did. She went. We went into the girlfriend level talk. Anyways, left. I was like, he's got my number. What he does with it, I don't care. He was a nice guy. Would I like to see him again? Sure. If not, whatever. Don't care. I'm good. Because that's not what I went for.
Right.
Long story short, he texted me later that night. And then he said maybe we can connect. We didn't connect again. I was busy. I was traveling. And then he called me on Saturday and wished me a good flight, said it was nice to meet me, blah, blah, blah. And we've been on and off connecting all week, like texting a little bit, on and off all week.
That's awesome.
It was very awesome. So I tell this story because one of the things that another area of self-reflection that it allowed me was I have said for the last year, I don't want to date. I'm not ready to date. I don't want to, no, God, no. I've been very, not against it. I don't want to say I've been against it because, if it would have happened, obviously I was open to it, obviously, if that happened.
I think you've been very thoughtfully not looking for it.
Right.
Right?
But
You're not on the
real-
dating apps. You're not
Yes, no.
searching
and I
for
don't
people.
want to do that.
Right.
That is what I don't want to do. Which is sad because that is now, unfortunately, a big way to meet people, but it's just not what I want to do. And I realized kind of that I actually really had some walls up because I was saying, no, it's not what I want. It's not this, right? But when it happened, it was there. And I think I need to reframe that. I needed to choose better words. Because what I was saying was I had walls up. Instead of, you can be open, Dawn. If it happens, run with it. If it doesn't happen, don't. Right? It's okay.
Right. Like if it happens, it happens. If not, okay.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Instead of these, I don't want that to happen. Or I'm not doing that. Or nope, I don't want to date.
Right. It's still holding on to an outcome.
Exactly. And when you have these walls up and you say these definite things, right? HP is much stronger than I am, right? I can put all the walls up I want to put up, but his thing is much more powerful than my walls.
Right. He's always going to climb over top of them. He's always going to shatter them. The way I like to say, I think you're saying the same thing, but the way I like to say it is, my higher power will just yell louder. The more I refuse to listen, the louder they get. And when I say the louder they get, the lessons become more intense until I cannot ignore them anymore.
That is exactly what happened. And so what I realized this week, because I did reflect on the entire trip, like I said, girlfriend I would love to try, love traveling with, and I would travel with again. This situation with this guy, okay, you know what? I am open to dating. I am open to meeting someone. I can, but I want to do it organically. I don't want to go on the dating apps. Right? So I've spent this week looking more at my life of what I want and what I don't want and reframing some of that stuff, rewording it, adjusting my mentality about it. And by doing that, it's really rejuvenated. We've used this word, right? Rejuvenated my recovery, right? Recovery gets boring at times.
You know, it's so crazy that you're saying this because like self-reflection and I've spent this entire week doing the same thing. And yes, it rejuvenated my recovery. It rejuvenated my passion for CODA, for the Work It, You're Worth It program. Like it rejuvenated my passion for growth by spending the time doing that self-reflection.
Yeah, and sorry, I did have a good time. I got sick when I got back. So excuse all my.
That stinks. I thought I could hear it in your voice.
I was really sick. She got sick too. My friend got sick too. So clearly it was a great trip. I think that's one of the things that I don't, I'll say at night, I'll lay in bed and I'll think about my day. And something else that happened, about a month ago I had a little kind of health scare and went to the doctor, and my blood pressure was high. I had a cuff of my own that I was taking my blood pressure with, and it was high, so I went to the doctor immediately, and they put me on some meds. But when I go to the office, the blood pressure is fine. So, but they were like, well, this is what we're seeing, so maybe it's just whatever. And I noticed while I was gone, I'm like, I didn't feel bad at all.
Okay.
And I haven't felt bad all week. Like, not sickness bad, but like my heart rate, right?
Right, like
Yes.
blood pressure bad, right? Like your eyes hurt, your heart rate's up, your breathing is
Exactly.
tight.
I didn't feel it. And I'm like, well, that's weird. So I went to the doctor Friday and took my cuff in. This was the direction a month ago, was bring your cuff in. We're going to do, so they measure, how you have to make sure their cuff is the right size. So they measured my arm to make sure my cuff was the right size. She positioned it on my arm. So this was, let's test your cuff. I should have went to the emergency room as high as my blood pressure was on my cuff.
Oh, your cuff wasn't reading right.
She took my blood pressure. It was normal. She took it twice. It was normal.
And then on your cuff, it was through the roof.
Yes.
Wow.
So she's like, Dawn, you're fine. She's like, I can't, like, we've taken this every time you come in here, your blood pressure is fine. She's like, you're the only person that comes in here and your blood pressure is fine. Everybody's blood pressure elevates when you go to the doctor. And she's like, you're good. You're fine. So she's like, we'll just leave you on the medicine so it'll help you sleep more, help you sleep. I was like, okay, whatever. But what I did was in that moment too, right? When I looked back and I looked at how I felt that during that time and last week, right? I should have been winded. I walked 10 miles on that Friday. So I should have been winded. I should have felt it, and I didn't feel anything.
So are you saying that you think that your cuff being off caused you to believe your blood pressure was high, which caused you to feel physical symptoms?
Yep.
I 100% agree with that. I have no doubt in my mind that when we believe things are happening, those things happen.
Yes. I would get that reading. Like, I would just be sitting here, like, working, and I'd be like, because, they told me to take it sporadically through the day. So I would take it, I'd grab it, let me take it. And I'd take it, and then it would read high, and then afterwards, for, like, the next 4 or 5 hours.
Right, you were stressed out, though, because you were concerned.
God. Yes.
So you'd read it being high, and you'd be like, oh, my God, why is it so high? And which would, of course, make it go up.
Yeah.
It's crazy what we put ourselves through without meaning to.
So just by self-reflecting on myself and how I had been feeling, I was like, wait a minute, maybe I'm manifesting something not intentionally.
Absolutely. Subconscious manifesting is a thing.
Right? So, okay, you're good, Dawn. You're good. So I believe self-reflection is so important, more so after this week, and I needed it. Like, HP knew I needed this week.
It's crazy to me how all of this lines up. I say it's crazy. It is coincidences that blow my mind to the point that they can't be coincidences. Mm-hmm. So I spent this week self-reflecting as well. I didn't go on vacation. I didn't do anything special.
And just so everybody knows, this was an ironic conversation we had this morning when we were...
less than an hour ago.
Yes! We're like, what should we talk about? And I was like, well, I have an idea. And you were like, I have an idea. And then it just... It blew my mind. So this is a truly organic situation that's happening. It was crazy.
It really is. The coincidence is just HP is there. I don't care if he's a god. I don't care if he's a Buddha, if he is whatever your HP is. Even if you're an atheist and you simply believe that the bang happened and the universe exists, there's energy there. There is something there that creates these quote unquote coincidences. So everybody that listens to the podcast and that knows me well knows that Nick and I split up almost a year ago at this point. He moved several states away after 17 years together. Now, when that happened, I don't know how to say it. Right at first, it was just, there was a lot of emotion. There was a lot of anger and hurt, and I was extremely vulnerable with everyone around with the podcast and with my group and people, my friends. And then at some point, I don't know, maybe about 6 months ago, it all kind of just hit home. You know what I mean? Like, everything seemed so overwhelming. I didn't know where I was going as far as the future, personally, right? Like in my life for myself. I didn't know if I wanted to be in a relationship, if I wanted to try to figure out how to make it work with Nick. I didn't really know the kind of parent I wanted to be because I have 3 kids. 2 of them aren't Nick's kids, and we were together for 17 years, right? He helped to raise them. And so the relationships between them and how involved I needed to be in it. And then there's this new grandbaby, and she's amazing. I adore her. And my youngest is now in middle school and getting ready for 8th grade. And my son has joined the army and he's not in the house anymore. And all of this it all happened right around the same time. And I remember last summer having conversations with people about how I could feel it coming, right? There was just like this pressure building, and I could feel this, I don't know what to call it. It's almost like a boiling, but it wasn't really a boiling, because the last time there was a boiling, I was on the bathroom floor and almost drove myself to the mental hospital at 3 a.m. Right? So this wasn't that, but it was definitely an overwhelm, a lot. And so I kind of pulled into myself, right? There was a lot going on internally and in my head. And so rather than being vulnerable and sharing all of that with everyone, I just kind of stayed on the surface, right? I just kind of kept it authentic and I kept it real, but I never really showed the vulnerability. And it's taken me months. I didn't even realize it for a long time. It's taken me months to get to a point where I guess I'm just ready to just be vulnerable, right? I've just realized in the last week of looking at life and looking at the things going on and just really examining my feelings, I've come to realize that if I'm not vulnerable and if I don't share what I really feel and what I really think, deep down, right? Deep really think and deep really feel, not surface. I mean, sure, the sky is blue. Sure, I'm good. But that's surface, right? If I don't really share that deep down vulnerable stuff, I'm not being me. I'm not being authentic. Because Ashley's not surface. Ashley's fucking deep. And the feelings are deep and the emotions are deep. And when I don't allow myself to be deep because I'm afraid of my own vulnerability, I'm not being authentic with myself. That's the realization I had this week, right? How can I help others? How can I give to others? How can I give to my children? How can I teach my children and my grandchild to be authentic and to be proud and to be happy if I am afraid to do those same things? I also realized this week that I'm afraid to be happy. I'm afraid to just let it be, to just be happy with what it is here and now, because I worry that when I become happy with where I am here and now, I will stop fighting. I know that's not true because I'll never stop fighting to grow. I will never stop fighting to be a better version of myself. But knowing it's not true and having the courage to face that fear are not the same thing. I don't know exactly what that means, right? Being afraid to be happy and not willing to be afraid of it anymore. Now, well, I mean, I'll still be afraid of it, but finding the courage to face that fear and finding a way to just not just accept things as they are, but to truly be happy with things as they are. I have accepted that Nick and I are over. I have accepted that Nick lives 900 miles away. I have accepted that I am a single parent raising a kid by myself again. I have accepted that my daughter does not have the father I believe she deserves. But I am not happy about any of it. And until I can learn to be happy about it and find the things in it that are good, and there absolutely are, how am I going to grow from it, right? How am I authentically, truly going to be able to be vulnerable and share what I've learned if I'm not happy with where it's at?
So, what I'm going to ask. And
Yes,
it's
please do.
Your choice if you answer on all of this, right? And can I ask you what changed? What happened? Because what happened that made your relationship with Nick change?
Well, so there's been, I don't know how much I've updated on the podcast in the last year because I've kind of avoided the conversation.
Right.
At one point, about 3 months ago, back in March, I guess he had convinced me that he wanted to try to work something out. And then my aunt died. And I realized how alone I felt. And then I realized that I felt alone because I was reaching out to someone who couldn't be there, who wouldn't be there. And I realized that I felt alone because I was choosing to feel alone, because I was choosing not to accept, and not just accept, but be happy with where we were. And I guess, right, a month of silence on both ends definitely makes that happen.
Was it different this time around?
Yeah.
Was he? I guess let me. I'm gonna. This is gonna be a two-part question. So, one, is it different this time around? And then two, was it different than? Was this situation different than it had been in the past?
So, yes to all of the above and to all of it. When we decided to give it another chance, it was very different. It was an intellectual, logical conversation, and the two of us agreed together. And then when I guess we decided it wasn't going anywhere, and the end of it was, I mean, it was only a couple of weeks, but again, it was almost like a mutual decision without communication this time. There wasn't anger, there wasn't heartbreak, there was some grief, there was some loss, and a lot of acceptance. The only thing that's lacking is the happiness with it, right? Just being happy that I'm on the other side of it, and being happy that it all worked out as it was supposed to, and being happy that I learned the lessons I learned. I feel like that's the last step. And I've never been to the point where there was no hurt, no anger, no heartache. It's just done.
I'm going to challenge that a little bit, because I think I don't know how there could not have been some sadness.
Grief. Not that there wasn't. For me, sadness and grief are different. Sadness is like this feeling in your chest where there's just pain in your heart, right? There's just like you just have to cry and you just feel down and it's just negative. Grief is different for me. grief is like, I still have all of this love in my heart, and I just don't have anywhere to put it.
Okay.
So yes, to say that there weren't some tears and there wasn't some, to use your word, sadness, that would be a lie. There was absolutely sadness. There was not, I don't call it sadness though, right? I call it grief, right?
Grief. By using your definitions, it was. I guess I mean grief.
Yes. There's and the reason there was grief is because there was acceptance. Before there was anger and there was sadness and there was hurt and there was, I wanted to get back. There was resentment. There was revenge. There were still a lot of feelings that were not untangled before. Every time before. Because let's not bullshit. This isn't the first time, right? But the difference this time is I think the acceptance. I think that for me is the difference between sadness and anger and grief, right? Because sadness and anger are involved in grief, but it's an acceptance. And that's what it was. Like, it's just this knowledge that it's over. Nick and I are not together, and we will not be together. And there is no more working on this relationship, and there is no figuring it out with the hopes that one day eventually maybe, like, that's done. And what was left was weeks of grief, right? I mean, this has been a month before I got to this point where I could even discuss the fact that we haven't spoken in a month. And we did speak about our daughter. She's going to go visit him. So when I say we haven't spoken, it's not that we didn't text each other about the things we needed to communicate about, just not about each other. And he attempted to. He did attempt to throw some anger at me at one point while we were communicating, but I chose not to respond to it because I don't have anything left to respond to it with.
Right.
The grief has come. The grief has passed. And it has been accepted. And I feel like, I think that's the big thing, right? With grief, it's because it's dead. I am grieving a loss, a death, a separation, a permanent, right? Like when we sell a house, we might grieve the loss of our home. When we quit a job, we might grieve the loss of the career. When we quit a relationship, when someone dies, those are permanent losses that we're grieving. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, that's the big difference is that it's a grief. It's an acceptance of a permanent end.
I know you said this, but I just want to come back to it. Right there, in that grief, sometimes grief gets to be too much. And was there moments when you're like questioning, is this the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And I'm not talking about the last month, right? I'm talking about the last year. Because that's really where all my questions are. It's over the last year.
So if I take the last 4 weeks out of this, if we go back to July of last year until March of this year, April, May, even May, we'll go back to May. Take the last month out. Absolutely, I questioned it.
Do you?
Without a shadow of a doubt, there was anger, there was hurt, there was resentment on both sides, I think, right? There were angry conversations, there were fights. Yes, there was a lot of questions then.
Okay. Do you feel, and you accept that, like that you don't feel like the questioning and I know in relationships with myself where I hit this period of like uncertainty of what, like I know what I need to do, but I'm afraid to do it. And
so no,
okay.
I had that. That's what the last year was, right? That's what, like I remember, so in July is when he went to Florida for the first time. And in September is when I said, don't come back. We're over. And I remember when I said that to him, there were so many questions and I was only saying it because I felt like I was backed into a corner and I had no other option, because what kind of person would let themselves be treated like that? This is very different than that. It's just a realization of when I needed what I needed, right? I realized what I needed. I was kind, patient, compassionate, and direct in asking for what I needed. And I couldn't get it. And what I needed in that moment was bare minimal effort to show someone that you love them, right? I had a death in my family. I needed some phone calls. I needed a little emotional support. That was it. And it was impossible to get. And it wasn't the first time this had happened. So as I was sitting at my aunt's funeral by myself, feeling very alone, never mind the fact that my family was with me, and my sister and my brother and my mom and my uncle and my cousin all around me and supporting me, I still felt alone. And the reason I felt alone was because I wanted the support and the connection from the one person who was just refusing to give it to me. And in that moment, I realized that had been our entire relationship.
Because that was going to be my next question. Was that feeling and situation and the lack of him being there different than it had been in the past?
Oh, it wasn't different. It was exactly the same, but it felt different.
So
I think it felt different because I realized I didn't need him, and I was only feeling alone because I was making myself feel alone. And I changed it.
What changed? Like, what? I think this is the thing. Is what I want to say. Like, I'm asking is
me,
right? You changed. He didn't
my
change.
Recovery, not at all. My recovery, my growth, my 12-step program, to the point where, right, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, when my uncle died and we had this exact same conversation, he had 150 missed calls on his phone that one day. And then I drove home 12 hours with 2 little kids the day after the funeral and went straight to where he was staying to pick him up. That's the difference. This time, I didn't call. I didn't call not one time. Because I shouldn't have to call and ask you to support me emotionally when I'm grieving the death of a loved one. You're my significant other of 17 years. I shouldn't have to ask for bare minimal support. And I just, for so many years, it had been ingrained to teach people how to treat you, right? Show him your love language. Teach him how to love you the way you need. And it just, I don't know what it was. I don't know what was so different about this time, but it just clicked. Like, it's not my job to teach you to have empathy. It's just not. And you can't, I don't think I can teach a 43-year-old man how to have empathy. And I don't think I need to teach someone how to give me bare minimum effort. And maybe I just love myself enough now not to.
I think I like what you said there. Like, you should not have to teach a 43-year-old man how to treat you. And the word in there is the teach.
Right.
Should you be able to ask a 43-year-old man for what you need?
Absolutely.
Just a couple of word change there makes it completely different situation.
Right. Asking for what you need is a once in a while situation. Hey, can I have a hug? I'm feeling really bad today. Right. Asking for what you need is, hey, do you have $5? But teaching someone is consistently and continually over and over until they understand.
Could we call that manipulation and control?
I mean, you could. Teaching can be, and you're manipulating the brain in a way, right?
Right, to get what you want. Because you said something earlier about Nick. You were asking him to give something he couldn't give.
Yes. Or chose not to. Either way. I don't know what the answer is. Either way.
Right. But we'll give him, right, he doesn't have the
capability
of, right, giving you what you need.
Empathy.
Right. That doesn't make him a bad person. That doesn't make him...
Nick is not a bad person. Nick is an amazing person. He has an amazing heart. His brain, if he decides to do something, he does. Nick is not a bad person. Let me be very, very clear on that. I do not believe with any inkling that he is a bad person. If I did, I would not have spent 17 years with him. He wouldn't be the father of my child, right?
Right, and having an addiction, that's not what makes a bad person.
Not at all.
That was just a product of traumatic experiences in his lifetime that helped him cope.
Absolutely. And narcissism is just a product of traumatic experiences that we need survival skills to cope with, right?
I laugh at you that you're saying that. I actually had this conversation with someone Thursday evening, and she kept throwing up like narcissist and this and right. And I'm like, a narcissist is no different than me.
Narcissists and codependents are so very, very closely linked. It's not even the only difference, I believe, is empathy.
Yeah, right. And the thing about it is really all like I can use the same definition, and you did it just now, for a narcissist and a codependent, or for an addict.
Yes. An addict will fit all of the same. And really, what is a codependent other than an addict addicted to other people's emotions?
Right. Because of learned behaviors from traumatic events.
Right.
It applies to all of them. And so when people want to say he's a narcissist and they want to throw blame on that narcissist, I think you have to really look at the definition and look at what it is, because I'm no different. I just have empathy.
Right. One of the things that I think is extremely important to mention here, and this is one of the reasons I know you asked, was it different? So in the 3 weeks that Nick and I were attempting to work on this, from the end of March to the beginning of May, mid-March to the beginning of March, April, whatever, I don't know. Anyways, those 3 weeks were very, very different than any time previously in our relationship. The reason they were different, I believe, is because of the progress he's made and the growth that he's made. The changes that he is trying to work through. I don't think that anyone, an addict, a narcissist, a codependent, an alcoholic, I don't think that anyone is stuck where they're at.
Right.
I don't think there's ever a time to say, oh, they'll never change. Because we never know. People do change. I have changed.
Right.
And that is one of the things I saw in Nick in those 3 weeks that we were communicating again, is that he has put a lot of effort into growth. He has done a lot of work to try to become better. And it wasn't enough. And frankly, that was one of the things that he had said when he was angry was, it's never enough. And unfortunately, it's not. It wasn't. It's not this time.
For you, it was not enough.
It's not. For me.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean somebody else it might have been enough.
Right.
But
right.
for you.
And that's okay. It doesn't have to be enough for me. It only has to be enough for him.
Exactly.
Just like what I do only has to be enough for me. So right, that was one of the things that was different that I think was really important for me to, and I wanted to make sure I put that out there too, right? Because he's not a bad guy.
Right.
He is an addict. He is an alcoholic. He is sober right now, I think. And he is attempting to grow. And he's not the guy for me. He's not the one for me. We are not going to grow any further together.
That doesn't mean you haven't grown together.
Oh, we've grown leaps and bounds. Are you kidding? I met him when I was 26 years old. I'm 40. Like I've grown a lot. So has he. We both have. And I think that's what life is, right? That it's sometimes we grow together and sometimes we grow apart and sometimes we grow with new people, and that's okay. It's just life. It happens in significant other relationships, spousal relationships, friendships, careers, job, like all of it. Even families.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of your relationship has been built on, in a way, has been like trauma bond between the two of you. You took both took your individual traumatic experiences and bonded together.
I think that trauma bond is more where two people bond over shared trauma.
Right.
I think that we were two very traumatized people to start with.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So probably shouldn't. Maybe you should have used different terminology.
Right. Well, and then we just traumatized each other.
Right.
That's right. Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And we did. We both. I'm not innocent by any means, right? I have my issues, believe me. We both hurt each other, and that's what traumatized people do. Traumatized people traumatize other people.
And then when you have two traumatized people, right, I think what can happen sometimes is growth can be blocked.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're in this relationship together, and
I couldn't see past the projections I was throwing at him, and he couldn't see past the projections he was throwing at me.
And then once you separated, once he physically picked up and moved,
all I could see was the mirror.
Right.
Right? It's like throwing the projections at each other and having each other to look at prevented us from looking in the mirror. As soon as the other person was out of the way, for me, I became able to look in the mirror. As I looked in the mirror and grew, not that I didn't grow before the last year, because I'll tell you what, leaps and bounds. And the growth that I have seen in the last year, hell, in the last month, where I have been willing to really look in that mirror and really ask myself the whys of it, it's been exponential.
Right.
Right? Because when there's nobody else around to look at, the mirror's all you got.
And to give him, again, giving him the credit, right? It sounds, he is also growing. Like you've said, he's different than he used to be. He's growing. He's different. And good job to him. Like, he's finding outside of your expectations, right? It's hard. When we put expectations on someone, we are really pushing them down. We are not lifting them up.
Yeah, that's a hell of a change of mind to try to take over, though, right? Like,
it is.
I agree with that. Expectations are premeditated disappointments. I have heard that since I joined CODA. An old mentor used to say that all the time before he passed away, and he is not wrong. Expectations are just premeditated disappointments. And really, when someone fails to meet our expectations and then we're angry and hurt and grilling them and picking at them and poking at them and tearing them down, why would they ever want to do
Right.
that thing which we expect them to do that we want?
And I think I think we have to reflect on why we're putting expectations on someone. There has been times, not all the time, but there have been times, right? If I put expectations on someone else, I am pushing them down. I'm not pushing them down. I'm keeping them down because there's something in me that I need to have them where they're at.
Go a little more into that for me. Explain what you mean a little more.
So I personally I struggle with being enough. I struggle with feeling less than.
Feeling good enough, yeah.
Feeling good enough, right? So instead of working on me and addressing my insecurities within myself, I would project those insecurities on someone else to keep them lower because I was afraid to let go of them and focus on me because that's scary, right? If I have to look at me, that is a scary thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I hear what you're saying. I think we're saying kind of the same thing is, just so I know I understand what you're saying, is like, I had it in my head. Hold on.
Pull back out.
Yeah. Like, so like, for example, if I expect emotional support, and anytime I need emotional support, I don't get emotional support. I come at you like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? I needed you to do this and I needed you to do that. When really I needed to support myself.
Exactly.
I'm too busy projecting what I need onto you and why you didn't give it to me instead of looking at why I couldn't do it. And that's what happened at my aunt's funeral. That's what happened for me last week. I was at a place where I was healthy enough to know I was not going to reach out 1,000 times. It wasn't last week, it was weeks ago, but over the last weeks. Anyways, yeah. I was in a healthy enough place where I knew I'm not going to text over and over. I'm not going to call over and over. I'm not going to beg someone to give me what I need. And I'm not going to try to manipulate or project onto them. I need to look at myself and figure out how I can give myself what I need. And I did. And I realized in that moment what I had been doing for all of that time, even as something as little as, or as big, however you want to look at it as, my aunt just died and I need you to call me and talk to me.
Right.
Right? Like, why would anybody try to force that? If you're in that place and someone doesn't want to support you, why would I try to force them? That's like I talked about my mom and my nephew and the hug. It's the same thing. I don't want someone to hug me that doesn't want to hug me. I don't want someone to emotionally support me that doesn't want to. But I was so wrapped up in what I was needing and wasn't getting that I wasn't able to see that for years.
So did you ask? So as you're saying, like, I needed this and I wanted this and he didn't do it. He couldn't do it. Did you ask for what you needed?
Oh,
did
yes.
you say?
Oh, yes.
Right?
Very,
okay.
very clearly, very directly, absolutely, one time, and that was it.
Because then, right, instead of just telling yourself a story, I need him to do this and he can't do it or he couldn't do it, and just letting it go, that's your story. You asked for what you needed, and then he didn't. He did not provide you with what you needed. Now, does that mean that he could never provide you? If you, let's say you asked 10 times, could he one of those times give you what you need?
Sure, yes, and yeah, absolutely.
Does that make it enough?
No.
Could it be enough?
I mean, if it was enough, then it would be enough. Right? Like if that's all I needed was once every 8 months, then it would be enough. Mm-hmm. But instead, I needed it more and it wasn't enough.
And that's where I think where this like bringing this kind of back full circle, you did some self-reflection. Is once every 8 months enough for me?
No. Right. I had to ask myself that question. And the other thing that was super important was, do I want it if I have to ask for it? If I have to convince and teach and, right? Like, the flowers don't mean as much if I have to text or call and say, hey, will you bring me some flowers on your way home from work? It doesn't mean nearly as much as it does if they just show up with flowers.
Right.
So I don't want to have to ask or demand or manipulate to get the emotional support that I need. And I thought for a really long time that if I didn't do those things, then I wouldn't have emotional support. And what I realized is if I don't do those things, I won't have emotional support from that person. There are many, many, many other people in this world that want to, will, and do give me the emotional support that I need. I just have to be willing to accept it.
You know, I think one of the things our society has done, and it's better, it's getting better, is that, especially back in the day, right? You think back in the day of where your partner is supposed to be your end-all be-all.
Oh, I don't know if it's getting better. I think maybe our kids are just older, so we don't see it as much.
Maybe.
I still, like, your significant other in our society is supposed to be your one and only. That's why polyamory is still so taboo.
And I'm not talking about what I'm talking about is that I have to go to my partner for everything. They have to be my friend. They have to be my support system. They have to feed me what I need.
My protector.
Everything.
My guidance. My mentor.
Yes.
And that's not right.
It's not right.
It's not. For a long time, I thought that to get emotional support from someone else was having an emotional affair.
Oh.
What is an emotional affair if it's not getting the support and love you need from someone other than your married spouse or partner? Like, that is what an emotional affair is going to someone else to get the love and support that you need.
But the thing is,
why are we requesting one person and one person alone to give it to us?
That's a lot of fucking pressure.
Right? And we have girlfriends. It's okay for women to have girlfriends. Why can't we get our emotional support from them? Why can't... I just think our society is really having... Like, we are really going through a change. And it's really having to take a look at itself.
And why can't... You said, why can't we have girlfriends? Why can't we have male friends that we have an emotional relationship with? Now, there is a fine line with that, right? If I'm going to another person, and this can go for girlfriends, male friends, whatever.
Right.
I'm not going to go to anyone and I shouldn't be bad-mouthing my spouse to other people. Right? If I'm going and he doesn't do this and he doesn't do this and he doesn't, right? And then I have this emotional support and I gain feelings, that's different.
Right. Well, you're just talking bad about your spouse is never a good thing, right?
Never.
That's just wrong.
Because all an emotional or emotional support or an emotional, I'm not even going to call it an affair because, right, it's what an emotional relationship is with someone is, my aunt just died and I'm really, really hurting. And would you have a few minutes that we could talk about it?
Right. Just listen to me cry or tell me you love me or tell me that I know we're 1,000 miles apart, but I'm thinking about you or
exactly
whatever. Right. And it's so hard to see that I don't need that from the one only person, right? Mm-hmm. Like, for so long, I believed my boyfriend, my husband, my significant other, that was the person who was supposed to give me all of the emotional support I needed.
Right.
I was supposed to vent to work about work to them. I was supposed to vent to friends about them, and they were just supposed to listen and be there for me, and I did the same for them.
So you think about it, if I'm expecting this partner, this one person, to be everything for me, isn't that setting it up to fail before it even gets fucking started?
Absolutely. I agree. Our society is ridiculous with relationships.
Because now there's so much pressure on
Expectations. It's all expectation.
the weight of that. I mean, work is already stressful enough. And so we go to work and we do our jobs, and then we have to come home and we have the pressure of children, which is also very hard. And then as our, parents and family, parents get older, and then we have that pressure on us, right? And then I have to carry on top of all that, my partner's everything, and then I got my own shit.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, isn't it?
No wonder we break. No wonder our divorce rate
I was
is
just
so
going to say,
high.
I was literally just going to say, no wonder 50% of marriages end in divorce.
Right? Instead of letting hey babe, you got a lot going on right now. Like I'm here, whatever you need, I'm here. I'm here to support you. Let me know what you need, but get what you need. Take care of you. And if that means
getting a hug from another man and having coffee with them, then that's okay.
Exactly.
It's not like you're out screwing around on somebody, right?
Right.
Like,
if you have a conversation with a coworker that is a female, and you're not out in secret dates, and you're not going, a couple of us went to lunch. So what, you went to lunch?
it's so crazy to me when I see men and women, relationships, spouses, partners, where I can't speak to this, like this guy cannot speak to this girl, or this girl cannot to speak to other guys because they're jealous and they're insecure. So you can only communicate with this sex in this way. That blows my mind, because how miserable that must be for the jealous partner.
Oh, I had in my second marriage, early on, my husband was, ex-husband had a female friend, and she was married, and so he was kind of friends with both of them. I personally never really hit it off with them. We would do things, but it wasn't like, you just have people you're like, okay.
Right.
But he was like, we're just friends, and I was okay with it. Until one day, she went up, put her arm around him, and sat on his lap. Right? There's where we talk about crossing lines.
Right.
I don't need my friends, I'm not going to, out of respect for my partner, and I think there's where it is, right? There has to be a level of respect. If my partner has a female friend and she gives him a hug because he's struggling with something, or that's okay. But there's got to be, I think there's lines. And just having a relationship, an emotional relationship with a conversation about a struggle, or or the kids are too much, or the work is hard, or my mom's driving me crazy, or whatever it is, that it's okay. That is not a threat to your relationship. It's not a threat, and I think this is what people take it as. It's not a threat to me.
Yeah. It's hard to remember that. And it's extremely hard to think of that in the moment.
It is.
And if it is a threat to me, then it needs to be a threat, and I probably should walk away from whatever it is.
Right. And have a conversation with my partner. Because if you're in a healthy place and you're trying, you're getting what you need from wherever you need it, and you do have a situation of feeling uncomfortable, have the conversation with your partner. Hey, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable about this situation. I'm not trying to take it from you. I'm not trying to change it. I'm just feeling a little uncomfortable about it. Why I'm feeling this way. This is what I've witnessed or felt or whatever. What can we do to make this work and where I'm comfortable and it still works for you?
Yeah, I don't know if I would ever do that in that situation that calmly. And it'd be amazing if we could.
I know. Right, that's what I'm saying. Like shouldn't that be where we strive to get to?
Yeah, I mean, like I said one time, I'm looking for that where somebody could spit in my face and it genuinely and authentically won't hurt me, and I will just continue on with my happy-go-lucky self and day.
Right? That doesn't mean you're like, ooh, gross.
Right. That doesn't mean doesn't mean I don't go wash my face and clean that crap off and never go near that person again. But it
I'm not
still
gonna
isn't
punch
gonna. Right. It's not gonna internally mess with me.
Right.
That's for me, that's where I want to get. That's my goal with my growth.
Well, it sounds like you're taking those steps, right? Because I know Nick was a very big, I don't want to say struggle because it's not a struggle, but I know it was a hurdle that you have been navigating
For years.
a track, right? a track or a path, right? You talk about the path and clearing out right? You've been clearing that path out for a long time, and it sounds like you've gotten to the point in the path where you're good.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that that's where we're at. And it's okay, right? It's okay.
You know, one of the things one of my sponsee always says, she'll use this and she talks to other people, but early on when I first met her, I'm like, you've got to find the gratitude in your relationship that you had. She's like, gratitude? The guy beat the shit out of me. He pulled a gun on me. How am I supposed to fucking find gratitude in that? You'll find it. You'll find it. There will be a day you will find it.
And I think that's when I say the happiness in it, I think that's part of what I mean, right? The gratitude there's more to it than just the gratitude in it. Mm-hmm. There's like a genuine, and I know I'm not there yet. I'm not at the happiness. Like, I'm happy that it is where it is. I'm happy that it is what it is. I'm not there yet. I'm at the acceptance point.
Right.
But I do believe that there is a point where there does become gratitude and appreciation and a genuine happiness for the way it eventually worked out.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean, yay, it worked out. We're not talking a celebration, right? It's just,
right.
It's an appreciation.
It's not excitement.
No.
It's just an authentic happiness and acceptance.
I'm grateful for what I had in my life, right? I know I can say this for you. I know you are grateful for the 17 years you had with Nick. I know you are grateful for Cam. I know you are grateful for the ups and the downs that you guys had in your relationship, right? And without him, without those 17 years, you would not be where you're at today. And that's where the gratitude comes in. Thank you for the journey. Thank you, Nick, for the time that we spent together. And I will cherish it forever. It just no longer works for me.
Right. And just a genuine happiness about that.
Exactly. Acceptance.
Yeah. We're getting there.
Yeah.
This has been such a great podcast. It really has. I feel like I'm looking at the time like, oh, it's been over an hour. We got to stop.
We haven't done this in a while.
I'm super happy for the rejuvenation in this. I definitely see it. I definitely feel it. And I am super excited for it.
Yeah, me too. Ashley, thank you. Thank you for today. Thank you for sharing your story, for being vulnerable. I know it's something that it's been a little difficult, and I understand that, and but just thank you.
You are, of course, very welcome, and thank you. Thanks for this podcast and this platform and the meeting, and none of us would be here without you. Right. So, thank you.
So here we go. Like I said, we said earlier, we're rejuvenating this. We want to do something more with this. We want people to come on here and have conversations with us.
Please come join us.
Right. Now, I think we both have one expectations of everyone, for people, and that's just be willing to grow and be vulnerable.
That's it. The only requirement for attending this podcast is being willing to be vulnerably authentic. Authentically vulnerable?
Yes, open to, right, being challenged. And we're right, when we challenge each other. We do it in a loving space, right? Ashley challenges me, and right, I use it as an opportunity to grow. I don't take it personal because I know she's doing it with all the love in the world, and she wants the absolute best for me. And that's what we want. We want to be able to come on, have people come on, challenge the way we think, be vulnerable, and just work and grow together. And so please, if you are interested in participating in this and sitting down with us and chatting, reach out via the website, Work It You Are Worth It, to contact us and let us know.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, listeners.
Thanks. Talk to you later next week. Bye.
Bye.
We would like to thank you for joining us on this journey of self-discovery. Visit the Work It website at workityouareworthit.com to submit your questions and topics for future episodes. And remember, work it because you are worth it.